Amantya podcast series. We are back with yet another interesting discussion. The topic of today's conversation is breaking barriers with private 5G. In the current fast paced and disruptive digital landscape, with 5G networks becoming a tangible reality, more and more organizations are looking at deploying their own private 5G networks for increased security and control, more reliable coverage, and to unlock the benefits of next gen technologies like AI, ML, AR, VR, Internet of Things, robotics, etc. But what is a private 5G network? What opportunities does it unlock for a business? And how does it represent a radical shift in the way an organization uses connectivity technologies? To answer all these questions and to demystify private 5G, we have with us today Amantya's AVP Pre-sales, Gaurav Saini. Welcome, Gaurav. Pleasure to have you here with us again today.
It's my pleasure to be back at Amantya's podcast. It's been a while since my last podcast.
Absolutely. So, shall we get started?
Definitely.
So, Gaurav, my first question to you is: what are private 5G networks, and how are they, better as compared to, say, a traditional Wi-Fi or a public cellular network?
Private 5G. Or maybe before we talk about private 5G, let's take a step back and talk about public networks. So when we talk about public networks, those are like AT&T's, Verizon's, or Airtel Geos of the world. They provide networks to customers like you and me, and even to organizations lately. Uh, when we talk about networks provided to organizations, industries, they prefer the network to be more secure, reliable compared to a public network which is being served to common public. So that's where private 5G network or private networks came into play. And today it's called private 5G network. Before it was Wi-Fi network or private LTE network few years ago, and today everything is all moved towards private 5G. So private 5G as a solution provides various benefits, be it a secure network with various added benefits which 5G brings into picture, like high throughput, low latency, and ability to connect many IoT devices.
Okay. So, Gaurav, what is the implications of a private 5G network on the broader ecosystem, for the service providers, device manufacturers, and other stakeholders?
Great question in terms of the ecosystem. So when we talk about ecosystem, there are multiple elements we need to touch base. So spectrum being a key element when we talk about any wireless networks. Same with the private 5G network. And spectrum is the new oil when we talk about networks.
Okay.
So that's where spectrum plays a key role, which could be either a private network or a government issued licensed, unlicensed, or even shared network, which we can lease from carriers or government allows it for private network. So there are multiple parts of that ecosystem in terms of spectrum. Then we talk about access network. In terms of access network, setting up a private 5G network, be it the radio, the core network, integration elements to the backend applications, then devices. Devices could be standard smartphones, tablets, or IoT devices which are 5G enabled, IoT gateways, you name it. Each use case has its own ecosystem available. Then application is another part which runs behind the private 5G network, where for an example, if we talk about IoT networks or IoT devices, they need to go back to IoT platform, enabling the automation part of the network or the deployment. That's where the application comes into play. And then there are various advanced features in private 5G, where video analytics, AI enabled ecosystem, all those becomes a part of a complete private 5G network ecosystem. It's not just the access network, but devices, access network, applications, devices running at the back end. All those plays a key role when we talk about private 5G or any providing benefits on a private 5G network.
Okay, that's a whole lot of, permutation combinations we're looking at here.
Exactly.
That's So, Gaurav, what industries would benefit the most from private 5G networks?
So when private 5G network or private LTE or private 5G started, primarily energies, utilities, transportation, or industry 4.0 like manufacturing were the key verticals being targeted or looked towards. But as we grew and as we understood more about 5G capabilities, I think private 5G network is touching the entire ecosystem, the entire industries or entire ecosystem of the industries across the globe in one way or another. As the new use cases are being developed or under deployment, every industry is looking towards either replacing their Wi-Fi network to a 5G network, or even upgrading their private LT which they deployed few years ago to private 5G to get the new benefits. And again, the new every devices have started supporting 5G. Uh, they are looking at higher throughput, be it 5G camera instead of a cabled CCTV system, which runs or which is being analyzed by a AI engine running at a backend. All those feature sets are becoming a part of the network.
So, network slicing, it's a big thing in 5G. So, how does it play a role in private 5G networks, and what are its benefits?
Let's take a step back again in terms of what is slicing. So when we talk about network slicing, it's basically creating sub networks within the one set of network or one deployed network for different use cases. One slices could be low latency network, one slices could be for IoT devices, one slices could be high broadband, high throughput slice for different use cases. And specifically for private 5G networks, we would have varied use cases, be it like some devices may need high uplink or high throughput network like cameras with video analytics running at backend. Then some of the devices may be IoT devices whose job is to only send updated information every minute, every 30 seconds, or whatever the timer it be it. And some of the use cases would be automation where very low latency networks or the URLC kind of setup would be required. That's where the network would configure these different slices for each use case, each devices. Now the benefit of network slicing. In these slices, we can define multiple QoS, the quality of service for different users. It also enables different security level for different users. So network slicing is enabling users, organizations, and even public networks to create different slices for different use cases. Now, even in public networks, a lot of carriers are using network slicing as a feature to provide services to the organizations in private 5G. One of the use cases is uh, when we talk about private 5G or 5G network, the control plane, which is signaling, and the data plane, which is the actual data path, are on totally different stream. Now, what a lot of carriers are looking towards that they use their public networks control plane or the signaling or the user information, which is currently deployed for everybody, but they deployed the data network or radio and the UPF on the enterprise itself. That's where a new feature, which is UPF with ULCL, comes into play, where the control plane is being deployed. If I take an example of a carrier in India, they have their network running here. They would use the same network for signaling part, the control part, but in that specific organization, if I talk about our office, they would come and deploy multiple radios and they could deploy UPF with ULCL. So as a user, I would be using the same carrier same. As soon as I enter our office, all my data would start be routing towards the secure network or a different slice which is running inside our organization.
That sounds very groundbreaking, if I may say so.
It
Um,
is.
yeah. So, Gaurav, coming to the deployment of private 5G networks, so how does it impact an organization's existing infrastructure or their own, network management strategies?
So the way private 5G or the private networks are deployed. So from a private network, these organizations would have already have some ecosystem running, either be it a Wi-Fi or a private LTE. Let's start with Wi-Fi network. So Wi-Fi doesn't really give a lot of high flexibility in current feature set compared to a private 5G net. Now, when we talk about strategies, we what what the idea is, Wi-Fi and private 5G network to some extent may coexist within a network. Some of because a lot of devices which may not be supporting 5G today, but they are running on Wi-Fi for some time, for few years. So they would still need to be a part of that ecosystem. So how the networks are being deployed, we integrate the existing ecosystem of devices on whatever technology, be it Wi-Fi, LoRa, or any, if it's the IoT devices, we integrate those existing ecosystem uh, within the new private 5G network.
Okay.
So we bring the existing legacy system, the system running within the ambit of the private 5G network for that organization. So that way, what happens is they don't need to go in a rip and replace kind of an architecture or deployment, which creates interruptions for their network.
Now, talking specifically about Amantya's expertise in 5G, could you tell us about the company's private 5G solution and its key features and capabilities?
So Amantya as an organization look towards a holistic solution when we talk about private 5G. Starting from a device side, then the private 5G access network, and then working towards the backend applications. We understand customer requirement. In case needed, we work with them in developing a new application or upgrading the existing legacy application they have towards leveraging the new feature sets of private 5G network. Our Astra 5G, which is a complete private 5G solution, which leverages our 5G core, which is release 16 compliant, and then various form factors of RAN in the private 5G for varied use cases. We provide a holistic solution to the organization. Now, in terms of device side, it could be an IoT device, it could be tablets or various AR/VR devices which are 5G enabled. So we work with them from that part.
Does the solution support IoT and edge computing applications?
Yes. So I was talking about devices. That's where the IoT devices. Even when we talk about existing legacy devices through our IoT gateways or various devices, we integrate the legacy system. Now coming to the edge part of it. So when we talk about edge, our UPF, which can be deployed at the enterprises, would allow the private 5G network deployment that comes into edge part. Or if we talk about MAC, which is multi-access edge computing, we have a MAC platform which we deploy across spectrum for varied use cases. So with MAC, our edge UPF and IoT devices, we move into the holistic private 5G solution.
Okay. And what are the future plans, enhancements, updates on the solution?
So today we already support release 16, release 17 feature sets. We are working towards URLLC kind of deployment architecture. We are working towards cellular IoT deployments. We are even working towards some level of MAC deployments, and like I spoke about UPF with ULCL. So the next generation feature sets which are being asked by customers, which we understand would be required for private 5G, which would be helpful for industries to take their deployment forward. We are working towards all those features and try to take it forward and work with customers for their requirement.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Gaurav, for this insightful session. It's been a pleasure having you here to, share, listen to your views and thoughts on private 5G and also to know what Amantya is doing in the domain.
Thanks for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure to talk
Always a
about our
pleasure.
solution.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for today, folks. Thank you for listening in. Hope the session was useful and informative for you all. We shall be back again with yet another interesting topic and discussion. Until then, this is Rohina signing off. Bye bye.